Welcome. It's a very different way of running the course to what I'm accustomed to. So we've got people here in the classroom, we've got people watching live as we speak. Shane says there's 2 logged on so far. And then we've got people who will be watching the recordings at a time that suits them. So there's your missionaries, the equals from HCF. They have enrolled, and they will be, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, I think, or 3 o'clock in the morning. So how's it equals when you do students? They'll be watching us at a more civilized hour. So
Papua New Guinea.
Yeah. I was in contact today, so I really hope that everything works for them to be part of it. So yeah, we spread out literally all over the world. But it's great to be together. This is not an academic course, it really is a Bible handling course. So the hope is that you will be much more confident, much more familiar with your Bible by the end of it. Just understand all the pieces. I'm going to say this over and over again throughout the year. You know, the Bible is like to most people anyway, it's like a big jigsaw puzzle. And there's some parts that you know very well, okay, David and Goliath or Noah and the flood. And then the other parts that are very obscure, and you kind of think, I don't think I've ever heard that before. The question is, how do they fit together, or even take a step back, do they fit together? Is there any connection with the bits? And I want him to say that there definitely is. I want him to say that actually the Bible is one story. There's not even 2 testaments. You know, we always talk about the Old Testament and the New Testament, and really it's just one continuous story. And if you get the pieces right, you suddenly, the picture just jumps out. And the picture is Jesus. And that's not me making that up, that's Jesus making it up. Do you remember after his resurrection? He's on the road to Emmaus with his friends, and they are downcast, they believe Jesus, they thought he was the Messiah, they thought he was going to liberate them and solve the world's problems, and then he gets crucified. And then Jesus opens the Bible to them. He opens up the scriptures and shows them, and of course there's no New Testament at that point. So when he says he opens up the scriptures, he's talking about the Old Testament. He opens up the Old Testament and he starts putting the pieces together and shows, in his words, that it was all about him. He says that the Bible is all about him. So we must be very careful when we use the Bible as if it's all about us. You know, what is the Bible saying to me today? And of course, it is God's word to us, but actually, it's always God's word about Jesus to us. That's why God wrote it. It's revelation. It's God revealing himself to us through Christ in the Bible. And so I'm hoping that as we go through this year, the bits will start falling into place, and we'll see that there's just this most amazing story running through it, and it's all about Jesus. And we will have a much bigger view of Jesus at the end than what we do now. I think we can't have too big a view of Jesus. He is infinite God. And so whatever view you've got of Jesus, you need to repent of that because it's too small. No matter how big it is, it's still too small. He is huge. He is infinitely wise, infinitely powerful, infinitely good and pure. And hopefully the Bible, as we understand him from all the passages in the Bible, we'll start appreciating him more and more and more. Realize just what an awesome king this is that we serve. You know, his glory was veiled while he was, you know, there were glimpses of it. Remember on the Mount of Transfiguration, the disciples see a glimpse of his glory, and they shocked at what they see. There's glimpses of him in the Old Testament when he visits his people, Israel. But one day he's coming back, and his radiance will make the sun just pale. The sun will be like a dim little blotch in the sky compared to the radiant glory of the Lord Jesus Christ arriving. And we're going to see it, whether we see it in this life or whether we are raised from the dead to see it, we are going to see him arriving in all his glory. And then our faith will be vindicated. We'll say, well, we invested in the right spot. You know, at the moment our friends might think we're fools, giving our lives and our purposes to Christ, but on that day, he will be seen for who he is. Well, I've got a little letter that I've written to the students. Shane has sent it off to those online. So let's just have a quick read through it. It kind of just sets the scene and helps us understand where we're all going. Dear 2018 EBS students, welcome to the Evening Bible School. What a thrill and privilege it is to have men and women from from all over the Midlands, and not just that, for the first time all over the world, gathering together to study God's Word. I trust that this year will be a great blessing in your life. May I draw your attention to a few things as the new year begins. Please note that we aim to start promptly each week. If you're doing EBS online, then please aim to log on to GoToWebinar at least 10 minutes early so that we can help you with any technical difficulties before the sessions start. Is that all right, Shane? At this point, I must point out that Shane is sitting at the back driving a whole bunch of complicated computer equipment, and he is handling the whole technical side to broadcasting, webcasting the course. We also have a tea or coffee break halfway through the evening to catch our breath, so we'll do that every session. Somewhere around halfway, we'll stop for a cup of tea. We come from varied backgrounds, denominations, even nationalities, which will make for an enriching mixture of fellowship. One of the characteristics of the course over the years has been the way everybody joined in fully, welcoming and being welcomed, giving and receiving. So it's a reality of Christian love and support, and deep personal friendships have developed. The EBS is different from more academic courses in a number of ways. We represent a wide range of ages and experience as well as gifts, but we are united in a common desire to sit together under the authority of God's Word, to learn and practice its truth, and to develop our ability to teach it to others. Some will have more practical experience than others. Some will have greater academic achievements, but we all start where we are personally without the need to assess ourselves against others. There is no competitive ingredient to the course. Just as there are no exams or grading system, we shall certainly give plenty of honest feedback, but our desire is to see each student develop their own abilities and gifts throughout the year. The vast majority of the work for the course is contained within the class, but there will be some preparation required out of course hours, mostly just reading certain passages. So I'll be setting certain chapters of the Bible that, if you get a chance to, it will help you to have read it before we meet again. Some people who have done this course are just ridiculously busy, and they come to as many as they can, which is not all of them, and they read as much as they can, which is not everything, and that's absolutely fine. It's up to each individual as to how much time you've got. And I said an hour a week should be sufficient to do the reading prep for the next time. The course is run on a pay-what-you-want basis, which means exactly that. The banking details are as follows. Please just use the reference EBS. I prefer it if you remain anonymous. It literally is pay what you want, what you think it's worth, what you can afford. The idea is to open it up as widely as possible. We've got, I don't know if he's logged on yet, Shane, but there's someone from Zimbabwe, one of the churches up there, which is be great to have him. And really, it's just we want people to have a better grasp of the Bible. More information is available at the website, and there's the website address. Finally, let's pray for one another over the next few weeks, as often as possible. Pray that we shall be committed to building one another up and growing together in faith and love. Pray that God will use this next year in each of our lives to equip us for His service, far beyond what we might ask or even imagine. Pray that the course will fulfill this purpose of raising up and equipping Christians for kingdom service. Do let me know if you have any questions or practical problems we can help to sort out. I look forward to working with you during the coming year. Okay, it's kind of just to set the scene. Are there any questions right there? Anything we can clarify? Any questions about the course?
Is this just a one-year course, or is it? It is just one.
It's just 1 year. Many people have done it more than once. So we've had two. I'm thinking of 2 people that have come and done it 3 times. So it's just 1 year. It used to be a 2-year course, an all-day course. So it was very intensive, and it was designed originally for people who we call apprentices or interns, young people who joined the church, not sure if they should go into full-time work, but they were kind of slaves in the local church, and to get trained, they would be sent on this course. And so it was every Wednesday, all day for 2 years. And then we thought, no, we need to actually offer it in this sort of format that's much more accessible for working folk and for people who aren't necessarily thinking of a full-time career in ministry, and much more to equip normal Christians. So that's what this is, just 1 year. And it's 28 weeks. So it's half a year, actually. So we had 4 terms of 7 weeks, fitting within the school terms, starting late and finishing early each school term, just to to help us catch our breath.
And if we miss a couple of weeks, you still get the notes?
Yeah. That's right. So I didn't know how many people are going to turn up tonight, and I know some people who can't be here tonight who are coming next week. Once you have a handle on numbers, I'm just printing the notes week by week at this stage. And once we've got a handle on numbers, I'll print the rest of the notes for the year. You'll get the whole lot in one shot. Yeah. And the notes, you've got a sample of them there. You can write on them. You shouldn't need extra material. There's a lot of people moan that I don't leave enough space usually. But the notes are provided. Yeah. Okay. Well, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the philosophy, I guess. That sounds like quite a big word. Don't mean to be philosophical, but I want to talk about Bible teaching rules. If you looked at our website, you would have seen that I put up some 3 Bible teaching rules. Now, it's a play on words, rules that you should obey when you come to understanding the Bible. And in a similar way, it also means Bible teaching rules. It's the best way, okay? To teach the Bible is the best way to equip Christians, to make Christians and then equip Christians. So really, Bible teaching should be paramount. That's what the local pastor is actually paid to. We see that with the apostles. They want to give themselves to the ministry of the word and prayer. And all the other really important things were delegated so that the apostles could actually teach the Bible. And we're wanting to follow in that sort of vein. So there are a couple of things that kind of form the foundation to this course. A couple of assumptions. Presuppositions, if you want. The first is that God has spoken. We believe that. I believe that God has spoken. He's a speaking God. We see that from creation. Let there be. And each time he says it, he gets what he wants. God's word achieves God's will. It's not just God expressing, I wish there could be a sun. He's saying, let there be sun. And his words create what he wants. His will is done by his word going out. Whether it's his audible spoken word, as we see in Genesis, or whether it's his written word. His word contains his power. It's his creative power going out. And so the apostles always were word-centered people. And they would always take in the word, which actually was just the Old Testament in their day. They didn't have a New Testament yet. They were busy. They would come to write it later. But they would take the Old Testament and they would open it up and they'd explain it and unpack it for people. Always being Christ-focused, always showing how Jesus fulfills this promise, that passage, that threat, how it's all about Jesus. That's what the apostles did, day in and day out. They got beaten up for it, they got imprisoned for it, but they wouldn't stop doing it. They were threatened, and they said, we must obey God. And our job is to open the word for God's people. And we see the prophets doing that in the Old Testament as well. Unlike the dumb gods of the pagan nations who can't speak and can't hear and can't see, the living true God can see and hear and speak. He is in a class of his own. And so you can carve yourself a nice little god out of a piece of wood and you can bow down to it and pray to it until the cows come home. I'm afraid it can't hear you. It can't hear you. It can't see your needs, your plight. Can't feel anything for you. It's got no heart. But the God of the Bible has all of those things. And he has spoken. And so we want him to be word-centered. And we want the Bible to come alive this year. Secondly, God has spoken and it is written. He had it written for us. It was written by apostles in the Old Testament. It was written by the apostles in the New Testament. But that living word of God has been written and preserved for us through the blood of people sometimes, who gave their lives to make sure the Bible survived down to our day. So it is a living and enduring word for every generation. It's always relevant. We never have to try and make the Bible relevant. It is relevant. It never gets out of date. The way we teach it needs to be relevant. The way we do our church style of church, that must change all the time with every generation. But the content, what God has said. And then the third thing is preach the word. We have been commissioned. If you're a Christian, God's will for you is that you preach the word. Now that might be jumping up in a pulpit on a Sunday like I do. It might be teaching Sunday school, or it might be simply explaining to your kids but we are, as Christians, we are to be preachers. We are to be not standing up, thumping a pulpit. I don't mean that by preaching. I mean taking the Bible and teaching people about Jesus, explaining what he has done. Because what he has done is contained in the Bible. Now, the person who does that, though, needs to know what they're talking about. Because there's nothing worse than a false teaching. The gospel is such a glorious gospel, and our God is such a glorious God that to falsely portray him, or to promise things that he hasn't promised, or to put guilt on people where he doesn't put guilt on people, well, it's a very, very serious thing. And so we need to come to grips. We need to be very careful. We need to be responsible. The souls are literally at stake from how we teach the Bible. And so there are three little things quickly that we try and work hard at. First is context. We really try and show what each verse or each passage means in its context. We do that with all sorts of other literature. We do it with the newspaper. We do it with websites when we're reading about the cricket. We don't just take a sentence out of the middle of an article about Zuma and let it stand alone. No, there's a context. We read the passage and then we understand what a particular sentence means within its context. And when it comes to the Bible, people throw rules like that out the window. I don't know why, but they do, and we mustn't, because the Bible means what it means within the context. So we'll look at context, and then we must try and understand how it fits in, not just in this passage, but within the whole Bible. Is it a New Testament or an Old Testament passage? Did it come before or after, for instance, Adam and Eve sinned? Did it come before or after the flood? Did it come before or after David, the first or the second king of Israel? All of that matters, and we need to know our Bible. We need to be familiar if we're going to go and read a verse and get it right. Get it right is the second thing. So once we've understood the context, we need to understand the words that we read. Sometimes words are hard in the Bible. So you'll get big words like justification, like atonement, like propitiation. And we mustn't just gloss over those words. Those are big words, and they're technical words, and they're really, really important words. God used them. So we need to understand what they mean. So we need to look at the content. And then just thirdly, just to get it right in your head is never good enough. It needs to be lived out in your life, and it needs to be passed on. So we're wanting it to go from the head to the heart, wanting it to change how we live, how we react, how we think, and then we want to pass it on to the next generation. The church can go extinct in one generation. It's under massive threat. If Christians stop doing this, the church will go extinct. Just like that. One generation is all it takes of neglect. And so we don't want to be, not on my watch, not while we're here. We want to make sure we've handed it on to our kids and our friends' kids and our neighbors' kids and everybody's kids. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's where we're going with the course. Sure, quite a lot of talking tonight, so I'm sorry about that. The third thing I want us to look at is this, and that is to see it all. So, how the course works is that the first half of every session, the first half of every night, is this stuff, see it all. And in the see it all session, we're going to be working through the whole Bible in the year. Not every single book of the Bible, but certainly every genre, every section of the Bible. We'll start in the beginning. It's a good place to start, according to Julie Andrews. And we will work right through to Revelation at the end of the year. And that's going to take us a year, and it's the first half of the course, seeing it all. In other words, a bird's eye view, looking down at the Bible, understanding how the bits fit together, and trying to make sense of all the different parts. The second half of the session, so after tea, we're going to look at, for 6 months, one thing, and then the last 6 months, something different. The first 6 months is the getting it right stuff that I've talked about. Looking at the words of the Bible, how do I read the Bible and understand it? And then the last 6 months, how do I put it across? How do I teach others? Whether that's my husband, my kids, my neighbor, my Sunday school class, whatever. Just some helpful things on how to actually explain the Bible to others. So in our first session, we're going to spend a couple of minutes tonight looking at what is the Bible all about. We're wanting to understand not only the individual stories, and if you've had a good church upbringing, if your parents possibly were Christians and made sure you went to Sunday school, you might know those individual stories quite well. That's a great privilege. I never had that. We never went to church-going family. But you might know the individual stories. The question is, Do you know how they're linked together? Do you know why they are where they are? Do you know why one comes before the other, and how it all actually links together to form the one big picture of the Bible? That's what we're going to be working hard at this year. What is the Bible all about? I don't mean what do you think the Bible is all about, because you ask 100 people, they will tell you what they think the Bible is all about. God's rules for living, or how to get to heaven, or who knows what else. How to have a happy family, how to have a successful business. There's 101 different theories on what the Bible is all about. The question is, what does the Bible say that the Bible is all about? And when you look at that, well, then actually the Bible says that it's all about Jesus. It's all about God. And who is this God? Well, he is the God who revealed himself. We're not talking about Allah here, or one of the Hindu gods who don't exist. We're talking about the God who does exist, and actually became a man to introduce himself to us, the Lord Jesus Christ. And the Bible is his revelation of himself. Now, there's lots of different ways of coming at the answer of the Bible. You know, the Bible's about God's love for humankind. The Bible is about God's grace or God's mercy or rescue or redemption. There's lots of different ways of saying what the Bible is all about. But I think that those are all different side doors into what the Bible is really all about. You can go through a side door, but it's best to go through the main door. Then you get the full impact of what the Bible is about. And the main door to the Bible is through the Old Testament idea of covenant and the New Testament idea of kingdom. So throughout the Old Testament, we find God making covenants. Now, what is a covenant? It's just a promise. It's a promise with big consequences, though. It actually is a secular idea. It's when two nations are at each other's throats, and they decide to draw up a covenant. And it's an agreement that is binding on both parties with dire consequences if you break it. And God says, I'm going to use that idea to try and explain how I relate to human beings. Some covenants were between equals, so that two powers would get together and together decide that they're not going to ever have war, and together they're going to cooperate, or whatever, a bit like a trade agreement today, BRICS, should I say. That's a kind of a covenant between equals. But the covenants we find in the Bible are modeled on a different kind of covenant. They're modeled on the covenant between a massive, powerful nation and a pathetically little small nation. When the small nation looks at the big nation, you know, Lesotho looks at America and says, oh my goodness, you know, America wants our water. They could just wipe us out in no time at all. We better come to some agreement with them. And so the small nation will approach the big nation and say, look, please don't wipe us out. In return for our safety, we'll give you this much water. And they come to an agreement and they sign it. And if the little nation doesn't live up to what is signed, it gets wiped out. That kind of covenant is what the Bible covenants are modeled on. Here's this enormous God who can, at a word, create universes. He can throw stars into space just by speaking a word. And here we are, right, at his mercy. He could snuff us out in an instant. And he condescends to draw up a covenant with us. He comes to Moses, or he comes to David, he comes to Noah, he comes to Adam even. And there are these covenants, these promises that God draws up with the human race, with dire consequences of breaking them, which Israel completely neglected. And over again, and every single time, without exception, Israel broke the covenants. And they got what they deserved. Sometimes they were enslaved in Egypt, other times they were enslaved to Babylon, other times they were wiped out by the Assyrians. But none of that came as a surprise, because in each case, God had warned them beforehand. Look, are you sure? Remember Joshua said, are you sure you and your household are going to serve the Lord? Yes, we're sure, they said. He says, you're not, you know. They said, yes, we are, you know. He says, you're not. And they didn't. And they got wiped out because they broke the covenant. So I want to say that the entrance into the door is a bit like entering into a cathedral. And there are these two doors, but actually one door, a bit like that. And there are two doors. The one is covenant. It's the way that God deals with us. It's the agreements God draws up with the human race. Initially through Israel, but now with the world. And the other one is the New Testament New Testament idea of kingdom, where Jesus says things like, repent because the kingdom is near. And suddenly, the idea of covenants in the Old Testament becomes that of Jesus' kingdom. He relates to us as a king would to his subjects, rather than one nation to another nation. And so we had the covenants with Adam and Eve, with Noah, with Abraham, with Moses, with David, and then of course the new covenant, prophesied by Jeremiah, people like that, and Ezekiel. A day is coming when the Lord will draw up a new agreement with the human race, not written on stone, but written on the heart. And then Jesus at the Last Supper, you remember his words, this is my blood of the new covenant. And his death institutes this new covenant. From then on, God deals with the human race in a different way. He dealt with the human race on the basis of the Ten Commandments and the law in the Old Testament, and now he deals with the human race on the basis of Jesus' death. So if you wanted to be blessed by God in the Old Testament, what did you have to do? It wasn't complicated. You had to keep the law. You kept the law, it rained. If you kept the law, the locusts didn't come. If you broke the law, well, then drought, then pestilence, then disease, then enemies. Now that's all changed. I don't know if you saw Angus Buchan's latest comment. God's angry with Cape Town. He's horribly mistaken. Because he's applying that Old Testament way that God related to Israel, he's applying that to Cape Town. As if Jesus hasn't come. Because God does not deal with us on the basis of law anymore. The way that you want to get blessed, if you want to get blessed by God now, come to Christ, become a Christian, and repent and make him your king. You cannot keep the Old Testament law. Only one person has ever done that, and that's Jesus himself. And he did it not for himself, he did it for you. So his obedience gets counted to your credit, and he has kept it for you. So he keeps the law for you, and then he dies for your sins. And so if you want blessing from God today, it's got nothing to do with obedience, because we're hopeless at that. It's got everything to, obedience to this one thing: become a Christian. Lay your life at Christ's feet. Go to him for mercy and forgiveness. And then God loves you with everything he's got. He cannot love you any more than he loves you if you love Christ. And you cannot draw nearer to God. You cannot get him to approve of you more. You cannot get closer to him than if you have become a Christian. Because in Christ, he loves you with everything he's got. He sees you as being perfectly obedient. He doesn't see your sins, they've been washed away and paid for. And he sees you in your sinless, beautiful state that you're going to be in one day. It's amazing. It's an amazing thought. Okay, so Jesus talks a lot about kingdom. He says the kingdom is near. He says you must seek after his kingdom and my righteousness. He says this kingdom is going to grow like the parable of the sower, and this amazing crop grows. He says the kingdom is like a valuable treasure. It's like a pearl. He tells us how we can enter the kingdom. He tells us that the kingdom is coming. He tells his disciples to pray for the coming kingdom. He explains who will not enter the kingdom, those who are outside. When the king closes the doors, will be left outside, and those in the kingdom and those outside of the kingdom are going to be eternally separated. He tells us how we can be prepared, alert, and praying, ready for his coming of his kingdom. So, you open the Bible and Jesus is talking, you'll find kingdom. He's talking about kingdom all the time. And he's the king of that kingdom. So they're not two different doors. They're the same door, but it's an Old Testament, a pre-Jesus way, and a new and a post-Jesus way of coming to God. You came by God through the law in the Old Testament, like Ruth. If she wants to become, get into God's good books, if she wants to become part of God's family and a child of God, what does she have to do? She has to become a Jewess. She's got to take on Israel's law. She's got to become a Jew. We don't have to become Jews anymore to get close to God, to become one of his children. No, we come to Christ. We come to him. That's what's changed between the Old Testament and the New Testament. And we must be very careful not to say things like Angus Buchan has said, as if Jesus hasn't come, because he's completely ignored the fact that Christ has come. Actually, Cape Town, God's not angry with Cape Town. He's angry with the world, if you want to put it like that. But just because we've got rain doesn't mean God's happy with us. It doesn't work like that anymore. Just like because Saudi Arabia's got oil doesn't mean he's blessed them and he's happy with Saudi Arabia. It doesn't work like that after Jesus. We must be very careful to not ignore the fact Jesus is there. So there are two sides of the same coin. A covenant and kingdom. And the kingdom of God is about God's ruling over his people, over his subjects, through the king that he has installed. And that king is Jesus. It's not like, well, you know, we have to say, you must make Jesus Lord. It's too late. God has made him Lord. He's already Lord. He's already seated on the throne. That's what's happened at the ascension. After 40 days, he was ascended back to heaven and was seated and crowned Lord of all, King of kings. He's there at the moment, ruling, reigning. He's already king. He's already Lord. The question is, do you acknowledge him or not? Do you acknowledge him as your king, or are you still in defiance of him as your king? It's one of those two things. Everyone either has already bowed the knee to Jesus and said, I acknowledge that you're my king, or people are still in their state of defiance, saying, no, you're not. I don't accept you. And the world is split between those two camps. Now, the idea of trying to see Jesus throughout the Bible, technically that's called biblical theology. Biblical theology is the unfolding story, starting in Genesis, when Adam and Eve sinned. God responds to their sin with certain judgment, and we'll look at that. There's certain consequences, but also a promise. A seed of the woman will crush the head of the serpent. It's the first announcement of the gospel. Someone that's going to be descended from Eve, a male, it's masculine, a male descendant of Eve, will be the one that God will use to crush the serpent, the Satan, and restore God's kingdom to what it should be. That's right back in Genesis chapter 3. And from there, the story unfolds and unfolds and unfolds and becomes clearer and clearer and clearer until there's absolutely no mistaking who this descendant of Eve is. It's Jesus himself. It is God himself. He's not talking about a man like a prophet or a John the Baptist or a King David figure. He's talking about himself. I will come as a child of the woman. I will become a man. Be born in the normal way. I will come to crush the head of the serpent. I will come to destroy his kingdom and to establish mine. And so the Bible is the unfolding story of God establishing his kingdom. That's Eden. Mankind rebelling in the kingdom, rejecting God. God covenanting, making a promise to rescue humankind. God then fulfilling that promise through Jesus as the king of this kingdom. And then the news of Jesus' kingdom spreading through the world via the church. So that's our job. There's a million and one things the church could be doing, and a lot of really good things they could be doing, and should be, but not at the neglect of this. The SPCA are not going to spread this message. SABC are not going to spread this message. The United Nations are not going to spread this message that God has made Jesus the King of the world, and you must bow to him. The church has been given that message and that responsibility of making King Jesus known to the world. In addition to that, if you've got a bit of spare time, you can feed the poor or clothe the clotheless or start an orphanage or a school. Those are good hospitals. Anglicans always start hospitals. Good things to do, but never at the expense of this thing. The reason God established the church was to pronounce the gospel, to guard the gospel, protect the gospel, and to preach the gospel. And finally, of course, it culminates with Jesus returning to actually establish this kingdom, to consummate this kingdom, to bring it to life, so that all can see it. So you can summarize those with those six words: creation, fall, God covenanting, making a promise, then the rescue, the mission of Jesus, the mission of making Jesus, then the mission of the church, and then the new creation. I've got a couple of quick slides just to whip through. I don't know if you're familiar with 2 Ways to Live. It's a fantastic little evangelism tool to use. We teach it to our kids from age 3. Age 3 and 4, when they come on Friday, we do this every year. We go through this with them. From kids to adults, I don't know how many times I've done this with people. And it's just really fantastic. There's 6 little pictures that just summarize the whole Bible. I can't think of a simpler way of explaining the Bible. There are these 6 pictures. So there's the first one. The crown represents God, the ruling over his creation. He created the world and he created us on the world. That's what that picture depicts. And that's what it was like in Eden. Mankind ruling over the world, but under Christ, or under God. Not doing our own thing, but under him. We are his stewards, we are his regents, We are there to not only just look after the planet, but develop the planet. And that's what Revelation 4:11 says. You created all things by your will they were created. So God is the loving ruler and creator. Secondly, we find that mankind, humanity, rebels against that God. That's why the little man has now stepped out of line. He's out of line. He said no to God, the cross through God. Don't want you telling me what to do. Give me that crown. I want to wear it. I want to rule my own life. And we don't do a very good job of that, hence the mess around us. That's what Romans says. No one is righteous, not even one. No one has seeks God. They have all, what? Turned away. They've stepped out. They said no to God. Well, God's not going to tolerate that situation. The consequence is death. And that's why death enters his world and his judgment. Man is destined to die once, and after that face judgment. And so God will be God. He will not tolerate competitors in this universe. And he is the only Lord. He is the only God. And when we set ourselves up, well, we're going to butt heads with God. And we find death around us. We live on a dying planet, don't we? The fate of every person, 100%, is to die. Because 100% of people have done this to God. We've said no to him. We'll rule ourselves. Thank you very much. But God is not happy to leave us that. He gives rebels what they ask for. Yes, he gives us life apart from him. But he's not content for them to go on indefinitely. And so he became a man. That God who made the world becomes a man. And he comes to die in the place of those rebels. And Jesus comes and he never ever steps out of line. He lives his entire life under the authority of his Father, doing his Father's will. And so he doesn't accumulate sin for himself. Death has no right to take him. And yet he submits to death. He dies our death in our place. On the cross, we don't have God punishing Jesus. We have God punishing God. Jesus is not an innocent third party in this. He's not a bystander that God grabs and punishes. No. We have God coming to take his own punishment on himself in our place. The Jehovah's Witnesses say that Jesus is a third party and that God grabbed Jesus and punished Jesus. It's not true. Jesus is clearly God. If you read the gospel accounts, he does miracle after miracle to prove that. So there's God punishing God on the cross, or God taking his own punishment on himself. And Christ died for sins once for all, the righteous for the unrighteous, to bring them to God. Fourthly, fifthly, he rises from the dead. So he does submit to death, but not forever. Death cannot hold him. Death has no right to take him or to hold him, because he did not sin. And once our sins have been paid for, he rises gloriously from the dead. Praise be to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. In his great mercy, he has given us new birth into a living hope. How? Through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead. So Jesus rises from the dead. And the resurrection is absolutely critical to the Christian faith. We find Paul says that, doesn't he? If you can work out a way of proving the resurrection is true, the entire Christianity will crumble. It will fall apart. It depends on the resurrection. And sadly, people like Bishop Tutu have written that he doesn't believe in the resurrection. He doesn't subscribe to the resurrection. You think, well, you've got a huge problem, you know? It's like the most important thing in the whole of everything you believe.
He was the Archbishop.
He was the Archbishop in Cape Town, yeah. And he's not the only one. There are plenty of bishops and church leaders who don't believe in, walking on water or the resurrection or the virgin birth. You don't know how these guys ever get where they get, but anyway. So God raises Jesus, well, the Father, I nearly fell into the trap of talking about God raising Jesus, as if Jesus isn't God. The Father raises, God the Father raises God the Son. They're both God. God raises God from the dead. And he seats him, that's what I was talking about, the ascension. Seats him at his right hand, crowns him King of Kings, Lord of Lords, to rule and reign eternally over the universe. So here's a trick question. This one's for free. Who reigns over hell? Who's the Lord of hell?
God.
Yeah. Jesus.
Jesus.
Jesus is the ruler of hell. Satan is subject to Jesus. Every knee will bow, every tongue will confess. In heaven and on earth and under the earth, in the sea, on the sea, every living creature, including Satan, will bow to Jesus. Jesus rules heaven, he rules hell. He is Lord over everything. There's nothing he's not Lord over, which is quite a relief, especially when you look around and the world is chaotic. And above that sits Jesus in complete control, like moving the chess pieces around, making sure his will gets done, bringing despots and dictators down at the right time. And finally, it leaves us with a choice. There are two ways to live. Either you can continue in your disobedience, in your state of rebellion, in your defiance of Jesus, or you can acknowledge him. You can acknowledge that actually I do believe that he is God, that he is king, and he is my king. He's not just king of other people, he's my king. And I will bow my knee, I will surrender, and I will not try and rule my own life anymore. I'll do things his way. And so the two ways to live is either keep the crown on your head, but of course the punishment for that is death and judgment after that, or to come under Christ's rule, to become a subject in his kingdom. Whoever believes in the Son has eternal life. Whoever rejects the Son will not see life, for God's anger remains on him. We are born in this state with God's anger on us, and it will remain on us unless we get out of this family and join that family. Unless we change allegiance and make Jesus our king. Surrender to him as king. The two ways to live. If you do that, you shall not perish, you shall have eternal life. So that's a great summary. And I've literally done it on, what do you call it, tablecloths, not tablecloth, the paper napkins, serviettes. Yeah, I've done it with people. Explaining the Bible to them. You can just do it on the back of a cigarette box if you're a smoker. You can do it on a serviette. You can. It's so easy. It's so simple. And our kids, we teach our kids it, and they all know it. They can do it at a drop of a hat. Draw the 6 pictures. It summarizes the whole Bible. So the Bible reveals God's purposes and invites us to participate in God's purposes. But we've got to understand the Bible correctly. We've got to understand where God is going and who he is and what his purposes are. Otherwise, we can get ourselves in a terrible muddle and go way off track. And so we need to work hard at our passage. When we read a passage, we need to understand its context. We need to look at look at the chapter that it falls within. Look at the book that it's falling within. That simple verse we looked at just now. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son. Well, which chapter is chapter 3? Okay, which book? St. John's Gospel. Which Testament? New Testament or Old Testament? Well, it's the New Testament, and that's part of the Bible. It's after Jesus came, and that all helps us to get the passage right. And when you neglect to do the context, you'll start saying things like Angus Buchan has just said. Now, I'm hitting him hard because he's just said it, and it's all over the news. I think he's a good guy. Okay, so don't get me wrong, but he needs to have someone just reading his script for him before he makes these pronouncements. Should help a lot. So a little verse like that, there is no God. Twice, in fact, the Bible says there is no God in 2 Psalms. One is in Psalm 14. Now, what do we mean to make of that? There is no God. Is that true or false? Well, the Bible says it. Okay, but if we've done our homework and actually read the passage in its context, we will find that actually it says, the fool says there is no God. You see, it makes a big difference, doesn't it? The fool says there is no God. And you're a fool if you're an atheist. Sorry about that if you're an atheist. And by the way, fool in the Bible has got nothing to do with IQ. It's got to do with accepting or rejecting Christ. The fool might have an IQ out of this world, but if they refuse to bow the knee to Christ, if they refuse to accept what God says about Jesus, well, that's a foolish thing to do because he's your judge and you'll face him one day. This is a foolish thing to do when you think about it. Now, I did that, you did that. None of us were born Christians. We're all born fools, and Christ, in his grace, has opened our minds to who he is. Jesus said this, beginning with Moses, in other words, Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, and all the prophets, in other words, the rest of the Old Testament, he interpreted to them, that's his friends, on the road to Emmaus, in all the scriptures, the things concerning himself. So on that road to Emmaus, this is what Jesus was doing, what we're doing tonight, what we're doing this year. He was going through the whole Bible from Moses, what Moses said at the very beginning, through all the prophets. He explained to his disciples how it was all concerning himself, how he was actually the key to unlocking everything. to understanding everything. If you think and you work out the Bible and you're trying to understand what it means and you don't end up with Jesus, you haven't got it right. Okay, you need to go back and try and work out how that weird, obscure passage in Leviticus is about Jesus. Because if you think it's about something other than Jesus, you're wrong and it's right. Jesus says the whole Bible is about himself. Later on in Luke, Jesus says to the disciples, "These are my words that I spoke to you while I was still with you. That everything written about me in the law of Moses, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, and Numbers, the 5 Pentateuch, the 5 books of Moses, and of the prophets, and of the Psalms," he says, "they're all written about me, and they must all be fulfilled." It's a massive claim to make, don't you think? To say the Bible is about you, and that he has come to fulfill those things. Then he opened up their minds to understand them, and said to them, "Thus it is written that the Christ should suffer, and on the third day rise from the dead, that repentance and forgiveness of sins should be proclaimed in his name to all nations, beginning from Jerusalem." So it's a big claim to make, and it's a big task we want ahead of us, to understand Christ from all the scriptures. And we need to work hard at becoming familiar with the Bible if we're going to get this right. You can easily twist words, can't you, to make them suit yourself. Something like this: "Woman without her man is nothing." Now, what does that mean? Well, the ladies think it means one thing and the men are thinking something else. Because there's no punctuation. You need to get the punctuation in there. Woman without her man is nothing. Or woman without her man, well, she's nothing. She needs a man. Can you see that actually the words haven't changed? But how you read them and the context is so important. The context will tell you what the author meant when those words were written. Is he a male chauvinist, or is he a woman's, feminist, a woman's liver? Because if you read before and after, you'll understand what he's trying to say. And of course, a bit of punctuation would have helped to get it to understand what the author meant by those words. It's a bit like this one as well. Let's eat grandma, or let's eat grandma. Okay, punctuation saves lives. And so, taking care with the words is so important. Understanding the words, trying to understand what they meant to the original reader is so important. That solves half the trouble. If you can understand what the original reader would have meant, what they would have understood from those words, you're on the right track. The Bible is a bit like this. Have you heard the story of the blind men with the elephant? One man says he's feeding a wall. No, so this is definitely a wall, guys. He's pushing on the side. Okay. Another guy says, no, I've got a snake. He's holding onto the trunk. Another guy says, no, this is a spear. He's holding onto the tusk. It's a spear. Another man, no, it's a fan. It's the ear moving and the wind. I can feel it. What are you talking about? This is a fan. Okay. Another guy says, no, it's a rope. He's holding on the tail. Another guy says, no, this is a tree. He's holding onto the leg. What you need, you see, is to understand all these different parts, is to know what the whole is saying. And that's what we need to do this year. If you just dive in and grab a verse, you could be holding the tusk, or the ear, or the tail. But you don't know what you've got here until you've actually seen it all. That's what we're saying. Trying to step back, have a big picture of what the whole Bible is about. And Jesus already let the cat out of the bag. It's about him. We've got to see how it's about him. That's another story. And that's our task this year. Here's an example. The idea is to try and, by the end of this year, you'll be so familiar with the Bible that I can just throw a verse at you, and you'll be able to tell me what it means. You'll be able to tell me where it comes from. It's a bit like this. Who's this picture of? Nelson Mandela. How did you know that? How did we know that? Of course it is.
Yeah.
Why? We are so familiar with that face that what I'm going to show you is that. And you know it's Nelson Mandela. Because we know the whole. We know the whole so well. And that's what we've got to do with the Bible. If we're going to have any teaching responsibility in the church, whether it's little kids or preaching from the pulpit, we have to understand the whole. Otherwise, we're going to get that eye wrong. We're going to get that tusk wrong. We're going to get the message wrong. But once we come to grips with the whole picture, well, we can't get it wrong. It's clear as the nose in your face what the Bible is saying, what a particular passage is saying. Now, not all passages are equally easy. Luckily, not all equally difficult either. But I'm hoping that by the end of this course, when you go back and reread your Bible, it'll make a whole bunch more sense than it does at the moment. And every time I teach it, I promise you, I'm not saying this, I'll learn more. I learn new things. So that's what we've got ahead of us this year. It's time for tea, it's time for a break. Has anyone any questions? Know where we're going? Okay, we're wanting to be like those disciples on the road to Emmaus, having Jesus open the Old Testament to us and show us himself from it. That's our goal, actually, this year.
And just a question about about creation. I'm sort of grappling with one thing is that God spoke the universe into being.
Yeah.
But it seemed like he also worked because he's rested. And what is it? I mean, how do you reconcile those two?
The Bible is clear in the Old and the New Testament. It talks about the Word of God created the universe. By his word, all things were made. So he's a speaking God and creates by speaking. Having said that, how did he make Adam? He formed him. Okay, which shows great love and a great, I don't know what the word is, but
craftsmanship.
Yeah, he actually takes dust. He pours love and he pours purpose into this. He creates other things like cows and sheep and dogs by speaking them into being. It starts, he just speaks. All the inanimate objects he speaks, all the non-human animals, non-human animal he speaks into being. But Adam he creates with his, he gets his hands dirty, if you want to put it like that. Not that, how exactly that works, I don't know. The rest, I think, is a big subject that we're going to look at. We're going to look at exactly that next week.
Oh, okay.
Noah, do you know the word Noah means rest?
Right.
Rest is a huge, come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. I will give you Sabbath. I will give you seventh day. The seventh day is the only day that doesn't have an evening. Every other day is morning and evening, morning and evening. Morning, God rested. There's no evening. Because it's meant to go on for eternity. That state of rest, that state of, not God putting his feet up and exhausted, but God saying, everything is right, everything is good, very good, and everything is functioning properly. That state is, well, it is going to go on forever in heaven, where his will be perfect. And he calls that state rest. But it's a big subject that we're going to come to again and again and again. Yeah. Okay, in your notes, I've got a list of helpful resources. You might want to get some of those books at some stage. The best one, I think, is God's Big Picture. Where is that? Someone pull out the page number. I remember putting it in. Yeah, it's on page 4. Page 4. There's some books listed there. God's Big Picture is absolutely marvelous. This is based on that. Gospel and Kingdom is brilliant. It's got Graham Goldsworthy. It's much more technical though. It's quite a hard read, this stuff, but it's very, very good. But Vaughan Roberts, he's an amazing guy, and God's Big Picture is all you need, really. And then Michael Schaefer, a friend of mine, wrote a set of Bible studies called Promise and Fulfillment, that you can take your small group through the whole Bible like we're doing. I think in 8 studies, something like that. So it's a really handy little Bible study guide. And there's some other helpful things there, depending on how technical you want to get. So, all right, should we have a break? Stretch our legs. The kettle should be boiled so we can make some tea. For those online, we'll have about 10 minutes or so. We'll be back. So it's going to be quite fun. So you're right there, Shane. There's only one slide, really. It's the introduction. Pray, pray, pray. Introduction and pray, pray, pray. And you'll see from the contents page there that next week is read, read, read. If you're going to, especially if you're going to be teaching the Bible at a Sunday school class or a youth group or something, you need to know that passage inside out. You need to just be familiar with it. You might not understand it inside out, but you need to know it inside out. Just so that the more you read it, the more it just resonates, and the more you come to grips with what's actually being said. But before you read it, I'm saying pray, 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 and we'll get there. So many people, Christians, naturally seem to love reading the Bible. I remember developing an appetite for the Bible. I never used to read the Bible, never knew Genesis from Revelation, didn't have a clue. But once I became a Christian, I couldn't read it enough. I don't know why. Well, I do now. Now. But God gives you an appetite for His Word. You get a hunger to know Him better. And how are we meant to know God better? Well, through the way that He has revealed Himself. And the way He's revealed Himself is through Jesus. Obviously, He's come in the flesh. So if you'd been there, you could have really got to know Him on a first-name basis. But we missed that, and so we have His Word. He has revealed Himself through His Word. And so we develop this appetite to get to know God, therefore an appetite to read the Bible. But the question is, how do we explain the Bible? And how do we understand the difficult bits, especially the Old Testament? New Testament's not so hard. I mean, there are some weird cultural things you'll find in the New Testament that simply don't make sense anymore. We just don't know what to do with them. Like Paul talks about baptizing for the dead in Corinthians. We'll look at that as an example of a difficult passage. He tells, women to cover their heads and things like that. And you think, well, what must I do with it? You girls are all in defiance of not Old Testament law, but New Testament command from Apostle Paul. And you would be wearing hats if you didn't understand them correctly. So I take it you have understood that there's a cultural thing going on there. You might not even understand completely what, but we wrestle with these things. And what is needed is a journey. What is needed is a journey. And I've got a picture there of an ancient civilization on the left-hand page and a modern civilization, our modern world, on the right-hand side of the page. We need to travel from them, there, then, to us here, now. So when I read about, I don't know, I'm trying to think of an example, Ruth and Naomi, and Ruth covering herself with a corner of Boaz's cloak on the threshing floor. I'm thinking, what is this? What is going on here? That's what she did back then there. What is the equivalent today? What was she doing by that? What was the purpose behind that? We need to make that journey. Otherwise, I'm going to go around telling all my young girls, if you want to find a husband, what must you do? Wait till they're on the threshing floor, beating out their wheat, and then you must cover yourself with a corner of his garment, and then you'll marry him. I'll end up making irresponsible and reckless comments like that.
I've read that several times. I think, gosh.
If I catch my daughter doing that, I'm sorry to say, but it was apparently the right thing to do. I'm thinking of an example I heard of a guy coming to his pastor and saying, I'm head over heels in love with this girl, but she's not interested. She's really not interested in me. But I really feel like God wants me to marry her. I don't know what's wrong with it. So the pastor, and I promise you, this is a true story. He said, well, what did the Israelites do at Jericho? To get the walls of resistance to break, what did they do? They walked around 7 times. You must do that. Walk around her 7 times. The walls of resistance will come down and she'll marry you. Well, the poor girl, obviously, was totally, like, she's disobeying God by turning this guy down. This is, she's been like Jericho. She married him. It was a total disaster. And they come to someone else, another pastor, with huge marriage problems. He says, well, I can see you guys aren't, she never got married. Tell me how you got together. And this story comes out. You see, the guy who gave that youngster advice didn't make this journey from them, there, then, to us here and now. That might have been what Israel did. But if I go marching around, I don't know, Parliament 7 times, the walls aren't going to fall down. I can't just take that and transplant it into 2018. A bit like Angus Buchan has done, to hammer him yet again. He's taken something out of the Old Testament and applied it to Cape Town. You can't do that. You just can't do that. And this journey, this picture is trying to illustrate that. There's about 2,000 years separating us from the New Testament. And there's about, I don't know, 6,000 years more separating us from Moses. So we've got to somehow span that time difference, that cultural difference, that historical difference, every difference. We are not Jews, we are Gentiles.
You know the famous verse, when my people who are called by my name humble themselves and pray. People apply that straight to themselves. But we are not people called by his name. We are not Israelites. That was a promise made to Israel, to Jews. But we can't do that. And our country, I'm afraid, you know, we can't apply that to South African politics or to American politics or anything else. It's a different world. We need to make this transition. And what is the thing that's going to take us across? It's the gospel. It's the story of God coming to rescue people from their sins. That has always been true. That is not culturally dependent. That is not, it doesn't depend what age you live in. There have always been sinners, and there's always been a gracious God saving sinners, not giving them what they deserve. And we've got to work out how God did that for the Israelites, or how he did it for Ruth, a Gentile, and how he does it for us today. And then when we read the story of Ruth, or we read the story of Moses and Jericho and Joshua, we're not going to make those mistakes, because we'll understand actually there's a difference. So the wrong journey, the wrong way to take the Old Testament and apply it to ourselves, or even the New Testament books like the Book of Acts or whatever, those early books written by the apostles 2,000 years ago, the way not to do it, one of the ways that people do it that's wrong, is to read it literally, to have a literal reading of the text. Now, I'm not saying that we can't take the Bible literally, okay? I'm not saying that the Bible is not literally true, I believe all of that. But you can't have a literal reading of the Bible. You can't literally take what was said there and apply it today, because that is to deny that there's this river, a 2,000-year-old or a 6,000-year-old river flowing between. If we're going to do that, well, then we are going to have to grow our sideburns, gentlemen. You know, ladies, you are going to have to comply to all the Jewish laws that Moses gave, because you take a literal view. And that literally, what it literally said then, is literally what God is still saying today. And we say, no, hold on a second, you can't do that. You simply can't do that. In Leviticus 19:19, we're forbidden from planting fields with different seeds, 2 different kinds of seeds. I was actually at a Bible study this morning, and they were discussing, the guys there, that he's a big rose farmer, a rose grower, gardener. And he was telling the ladies about what they can plant in between to stop the bugs, a natural herbicide. And you can't do that in the Old Testament. You may not mix your crops. In the Old Testament, you may not eat certain foods, cloven hoof. You can't eat pork. That means you can't eat pork today. You're going to take this literal view. You can't wear clothes made of 2 different types of yarn. It was forbidden in the Old Testament. So a literal view would say, we've got to obey. It literally says that, we've got to do it today. And I'm saying, hold on a second. Judges chapter 6:37, a very famous story about Gideon. What is Gideon famous for? Do you remember? He put out the fleece. Do you remember? He put out the fleece to see whether God wanted him. Actually, it's a great lesson. Let me quickly look it up. It's a Bible course. We haven't opened the Bible yet. I'll just quickly read you the passage. Judges 6:37. Gideon said to God, if you will save Israel by my hand as you have promised, then look, I will place a woolen fleece on the threshing floor. If there is dew only on the fleece and the ground is dry, then I will know that you will save Israel by my hand, as you said. And that is what happened. Gideon rose the next day, he squeezed the fleece and wrung out the water, a bowlful. Then Gideon said to God, do not be angry with me. Let me make just one more request. Allow me to make one more test with the fleece, but this time make the fleece dry and the ground be covered with dew. That night God did so. Only the fleece was dry and the ground was covered in dew. Now, what would a literal view of the Bible do with a passage like that? If I was a literalist and I was preaching that passage, I would stand up on Sunday and I would read the story, and then what would I say next?
Try it.
Sorry? Try it. Try it. Yeah. No, absolutely. Try it. Exactly. We ought to be putting out fleeces. We ought to we can see what God wants us to do. But what Gideon was doing was wicked. Why? Because listen to his words. Gideon said to God, if you will save Israel by my hand, as you have promised, then do this. In other words, if you read the context, God has already promised Gideon deliverance. He has promised Gideon victory. And what's Gideon's sin? He doesn't believe God. He does not take God. He does not believe God will do it. And so he starts testing God. It is a wicked thing to do. A Christian doesn't do this. And Gideon shouldn't have either. It's not a model for us to follow. In fact, he's a model of wickedness, of someone, a leader who doubted God, versus someone like Joshua or Caleb, who were wonderful. Dear old Caleb in his 80s or 90s, saying, someone give me a sword, I'm going in there, sort this out once and for all. Not Gideon, no, we've got to test God, you've got to test God again, I'm not sure. And here he's not just a normal Christian like you are, he's an anointed leader of Israel. He's in a different category, different level to us. This is not his place to test God at all. And yet, I might encourage my people to put out a fleece. If you're not sure on God's will for your life, well, put out a fleece. God says he will confirm. I'd say, no, hold on a second. This is not the model of godliness at all. Don't take it literally. Joshua, for example, Joshua chapter 1, if you know that chapter, God over and over and over, it gets quite monotonous. Be strong, be courageous, be brave, be strong, be courageous, do not be afraid, do not be terrified. Don't let the book of the Lord depart from you. Don't turn to the left or the right. Don't have anything to do with paganism. And I might stand up on a Sunday and say, we need to be like Joshua. We need to have nothing to do with non-Christian music. We should have nothing to do with non-Christian culture. We are not to look to the left or to the right. We must be strong. We must go out there bravely. Actually, who is Joshua a model of? Yeah, not me, Jesus. And who is my model in that story? Who is my equivalent in the story? Well, the quivering Israelites, actually. They're a picture of me and my stumbling around and sinfulness and reluctance to obey God. And here comes a man who will lead his people victoriously, strongly, courageously, he won't be tempted to turn away from his Father's will, and Jesus comes and he's our Joshua. In fact, Joshua in Hebrew and Jesus in Aramaic mean the same thing. God saves. Jesus in Hebrew is Joshua. He is a picture of Jesus, not us. I mustn't be urging my people to be like Joshua, because it is too big a burden. It is impossible for Christians to be like Joshua. It took Jesus, our champion, Jesus, our representative, came. And he was like Joshua, so thank goodness I don't have to be. So when I am doubtful and I don't know what to do, and I waver between, in my commitment to God, it's okay, because Jesus' death has covered all of that. And here I have, I've got my Joshua who attains the victory for me on my behalf. Another classic example from the New Testament is the Good Samaritan, the story of the Good Samaritan, where you take the passage and you invest it with all sorts of hidden meanings. And so a very, very famous way of teaching the Good Samaritan goes like this, and I'm not exaggerating. This was fashionable to teach the parables like this, and the Good Samaritan exactly like this. The man in the story is Adam, because the word Adam means man in Hebrew. A man went down. Do you remember how it starts? A man went down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and that man must have been Adam. He went down to Jericho. Down to Jericho means the fall. It represents Adam and Eve's sin and how humankind has sinned and gone down. They were met by robbers, and the robbers represent the demons and the satanic forces that are at work against us, the tempter. He was stripped and he was beaten, which is exactly what sin does to us. It leaves us battered and bruised. Then remember the three people come past, a priest, and then the Levite, and then the Good Samaritan. Well, the priest represents religion, and how religion can't help you if you're a sinner. It just makes your plight worse. And then the Levite came past, and he represents the law, And the law can't help you either, because you find you can't keep the law and you keep breaking the law. And then the Good Samaritan came past, and he represents Jesus. Jesus is the Good Samaritan. And he was traveling from Jerusalem to Jericho. Jerusalem representing heaven, Jericho representing earth. Jerusalem, the holy city, Jericho, the pagan city. So Jesus came from heaven down to earth, from Jerusalem down to Jericho. And he had compassion on the man, and he bound his wounds. And Jesus is the great physician, and that's what he does. He has compassion. He treated him with oil in the story. The victim of the crime was treated with oil, and that represents the Holy Spirit. And wine was given to him, and that represents the blood of Christ on the cross. And then he places the man on the donkey, and the donkey takes him to a hotel, remember? And that donkey represents the angels who carry us in our plights. And they carry him to the inn. The inn represents the church, of course, where you can have your wounds healed and bound up and made healthy again. And he gives the innkeeper, do you remember, 2 coins. The innkeeper represents the pastor of the church. And the pastor who looks after the innkeeper looks after the hotel, the pastor looks after the church. And the 2 coins represent, of course we all know, baptism and communion. And that helps to pay for our sins. If we are baptized and take communion, well, our sins get paid for. Now, I'm not making it up. Okay, that is exactly how people were teaching the parables. Not so long, well, that was quite long, a couple hundred years ago. And they would invest all these parables with meanings like this. What is the problem with interpreting the Bible like that? It sounds very spiritual. I sit in awe of someone who's going on like this, like, wow, I've never seen that before. I've never seen that. But you know what? God's also saying, I've never seen that before. I never thought of that. I never thought they would interpret it like that. The problem is, I can make it say whatever I want to say. I can say that the 2 coins are baptism and communion, or canoeing and fly fishing, or whatever, and you can't question me. There's no way of testing that the donkey represents an angel and that the man is Noah, is Adam. It's my meaning that I'm putting into the story. Now, we call that imposition. There's exposition, and you're going to hear these words over and over again. Exposition, and there's imposition. Exposition, like exit, is where you unpack, you open up. An exit is an opening. And that's what we try and do when we teach the Bible. We open it up, we unpack it. We make its meaning clear to children, whatever. Imposition is when you pack things in. When you take your ideas and you put them into the text. And the pastor he really wants to talk about Facebook this Sunday. But he needs an excuse to talk about Facebook. So he goes to the Bible, he looks around for a verse that will give him a springboard into a sermon on Facebook. You know, people do this all the time. But they are placing their meaning on the text. Instead of letting the text speak for itself and opening up the Word of God and letting God speak, they muzzle God and they force their story into God's Word. And God's Word becomes a tool for them to talk about whatever they want to talk about. And it's a disaster, because you end up being a slave to whatever the pastor feels like talking. And rather than take a passage, open it up, well, then you're hearing God's voice. Then you're hearing God's Word speaking for itself on its own terms, not in our terms. That, by the way, is called allegory. You might have heard of allegory or allegorical reading. It was very fashionable to teach the Bible like that, allegories. Everything became an allegory, where the interpreter put meanings into every detail. You must have heard about the one about David and Goliath. How many stones did David pick up? 5. And each stone, one represents faith and hope and love. And have you heard this? No. Well, you've been well taught.
5 brothers.
But I've heard it said that those 5 stones, each one represents something. That's called allegory. That's imposing something onto the text. Why did he pick up 5 stones and not 1? I think he was scared he'd miss. So he had some spares. I don't know why he picked up 5 and not 1, but they certainly did not represent faith, hope, love, and whatever. There were 5 stones. Picked up and he used 1. And the greatest of these is love. So that stone that killed Goliath. I've heard it. I've heard a sermon on it. We can't do that. We are denying that we are saying that we're going to dive into the Old Testament, or in this case, the Good Samaritan, the New Testament. And we're going to either just take it literally, or we're going to put our own meaning in there. No. We have to let the Bible teach itself. Let God speak. A friend of mine says, just open the Bible and get out of the way because God's about to speak. You know, we don't just open it like this. I mean, unpack the passage. And sometimes, haven't you felt that? You've really felt God speak to you. Like, I've had people come to me and say, how did you know to preach on that today? You have spoken straight into my life. And I didn't speak into their life. It was God speaking to their life. I was simply unpacking a passage that God was using to speak loud and clear to someone. Because I let it speak. I let the Bible speak on its own terms. We don't always get it right, but we try.
And this passage now would be to love your neighbour. Is that right? Or
yeah,
is that what I'm taking out of it?
And how did you get there?
I don't know. Because he's obviously was really good.
Well, the right answer would have been, I read the context. Because to teach people that he's answering the question of who is my neighbor. Because they come to him and say, he says you must love your neighbor. And they say, well, who's my neighbor? That's quite a big list, Jesus. Can you narrow it down a little bit? Give me a list of people I must love. So that would be my family, if some of them are harder than others. And the in-laws sometimes are tough. But can you narrow that list down a bit, is what the man is saying to Jesus. And Jesus said, okay, let me give an example of who I mean by neighbor. And he preaches the story where the Samaritan, the dogs, they were called the dogs. Here's a man who showed love for a neighbor by loving an enemy, the Jew. And so he's saying, no, I'm not going to shorten this, I'm going to widen it. It's every human being. And when you've done that, you'll go to heaven. So what's Jesus doing? You know, how must I get to heaven? Love your neighbor, okay. Can you narrow that down a little bit? No, I'm going to make it bigger. Everyone in the world, all your enemies. Jesus is making it possible, isn't it? He's raising the bar. The Pharisee wants Jesus to lower the bar. Give me a little list, and I'll work hard, and I'll love those guys, so I can go to heaven. Jesus said, I'm going to raise the bar. I'm going to say your enemies. I'm going to make it absolutely impossible for you to get into heaven, because it is absolutely impossible to get to heaven by doing good works. You need to actually put your faith in the one who has loved his enemies on your behalf. And his merit gets credited to you. And because he loved his enemies, you are counted as though you have loved your enemies. And all his good works are attributed to you. And God looks at you as if you are perfect. Blameless, holy, spotless, never sinned before. Not because you have loved your enemies, but because Jesus did that for you. You know, we're very good on, oh, Jesus dies for your sins. But Jesus also lived to keep the law for you. His life is just as important as his death. He lived in order to satisfy the laws that you break, he kept. And then the sins, to pay for the laws that you did break, he dies in your place, and he pays for your sins. He does both. His life is as important as his death. Now, that little diagram there, that flow chart, is quite a helpful thing that we've developed over the years of training people. It looks very complicated. Don't panic. We will work through it during the course of the year. But if you follow the flow of this, you won't make the mistakes that we've spoken of tonight. You won't invest a passage with your meaning. You won't do imposition. And you won't be a literalist, totally neglecting the fact or ignoring the fact that we need to make cultural allowance and things like that. And especially we need to make allowance for the fact that the Messiah has come. He's not still coming like the Jews in the Old Testament were waiting for. He has come, and that's got to make a difference to the way we understand the Old Testament. And it does. And so the first block at the top is context. You've got to get the context right. Like, for instance, why did Jesus tell that story? He was answering a question. The context is that he's been roasted. They're trying to trap him. There's a man who thinks you can get to heaven by good works by loving a short list of people. Jesus tells the story to blow that theory out of order. And then content, look at the words. If there's a word like propitiation in there, you better go and work out what it means before you take on the 4-year-olds at Sunday school. And then you work out a theme sentence and an aim sentence. We'll talk about what those are. And then once you've done that, you work out an introduction and a conclusion, especially if it's a sermon. You're good to introduce and get people onto the right track for you, and then you conclude, you want to wrap things up. You want to have structure to your talk. Anyone doing public speaking will tell you that that's not a Christian idea. Toastmasters, or if you want me to write a wedding speech, you've got to have structure. You can't just waffle and just hopefully you'll work out what to say when you get there. No, you have a structure. I know I'm going to say this, then this, and this. And then the applications, of course, you need to apply what the Bible says. You need to help people put it into practice. Otherwise, it's just headlines, just theory. But that will save you a lot of pain, and especially the people you're teaching, if you follow those little steps. And we'll do that. We'll do it meticulously as we go through the year. Well, just the first thing, the first tool, the most important tool, and I've got one eye on the clock here, so we've got 10 minutes left, and that's to pray. Pray, pray, pray. We're wanting to make sure that we are not people that just assume we can understand the Bible. The Bible is God's word. It's not easy sometimes to understand what He's saying in His word, and we need the author of that word to help us. And so prayer is really, really important. Just a couple of very short points. Ask God to help you not be distracted by good things. If you know you've got a Sunday school lesson to prepare and there's some good thing, I'm not talking about good things on TV to watch, but there are other really important things. Actually, those can be a distraction from the most important thing. That's preparing your Sunday school lesson. Interesting, in Colossians chapter 1, verse 28 and 29, one of the prayer requests that Paul sends to the Colossians is to pray that God would give him energy. Pray that God would give me energy to work at this job of preaching or teaching. So that's a good prayer for us to pray, don't you think? Lord, help me, give me energy, help me to get through this week, to prepare this passage well. Ask God to make His word clear to you, and Paul prays for that. In Colossians chapter 4, verse 4, he asks them to pray that God would give them clarity. And that's, I think, the most important attribute of a preacher. He can be a very clever guy, but clarity. You need the gift of clarity if you're going to be teaching. It must be clear, not complicated. The pulpit is not a place to try and sound clever, nor is a Sunday school classroom. Simple and clear is God's gift to the church. Help you to understand, pray that God will help you to understand the purpose of the passage. And you can go and have a look at Paul writing to Timothy. That's what Paul urges Timothy to do. Ask God to help you do exposition, not imposition. So don't come and force your ideas into the text and make the text say what you want it to say. You have some preachers like that. Hey, they've got a hobby horse. They're always preaching on the same thing, and they will find any passage to support them in saying what they want to say. It's usually about money. Give more, pray more, those sort of things. They make every passage come around to either pray more or give more. Exposition, exposing what a text is saying for itself on its own terms, the original intended specific meaning. Why did Paul write that to Timothy? How would Timothy have understood what Paul said? Right, I've got it now. Now, how is that related to me? That's the way to do it. Let's just say, what is God saying to me? No, Paul didn't write that to you. He wrote it to Timothy first. And then you can work out, okay, I'm not Timothy, so what does that mean for me? Imposition, imposing information from outside on the text to make it say something it doesn't really say. There's an example here of how you might do imposition. I'm wondering if we should do it, but I won't actually do it. Some years we have more time and I actually preach this sermon. Here's the outline of it, of a typical typical case of imposing on the text. And the passage might be Luke chapter 4, the temptation of Jesus, when Satan tempts him after his baptism in the wilderness. And so my sermon might be, beware the tempter. In other words, watch out, don't be tempted. And I will start in Luke chapter 17, that temptation will come your way, and then it'll come your way through sexual immorality, that's what 1 Corinthians 7 says, and through money, greed. I don't want you to be tempted in those two areas. Have a look at 1 Timothy 6, verse 9. And how do you ward off temptation? Well, fasting might help. Have a look at Luke 4, by praying. Luke 11, stay alert. Luke 22, make sure that you ward off temptation in marriage by having a healthy sexual relationship with your spouse. Paul says if you don't, then temptation can come your way. And then my third point this morning is trust God in your temptation. He won't tempt you beyond that which you can endure. And here's my sermon on temptation. What's the problem with that sermon? I haven't done exposition. There's no Jesus. You've got to do all this in your own strength, as if you can, without his help. And I've jumped around taking 8, 9, 10 different verses, all out of context, haven't paid any attention to why Paul wrote these things at those times, and I've jammed them all to make them say what I want to say this morning, because I want to preach a sermon on temptation. And so I will do a scour through my electronic Bible and look up the words temptation, and I'll find a way to make them all fit into my sermon. Now that is imposition. That you will hear the voice of a man when that sermon is preached. It might be a good sermon, it might be helpful, it might be fairly Christian, but you will hear the voice of a man. It's good advice. There will be no conviction by the Holy Spirit to do anything. There will be no actually lasting change that is affected by that sermon, because it is not God speaking. God works when his word is heard. God's word and God's spirit, well, God's spirit uses God's word to bring about change. Transformation comes by the Spirit applying the word to our hearts. And they had not heard God speak. They'd heard me quoting a whole bunch of verses that could have actually come from the Quran, because they have no context and they don't mean anything put together like that. Sadly, most of the sermons I hear on the radio on a Sunday, because I always time it, the timing works out there. When I'm locked up at the church and I'm on my way home, there's a sermon on the Sunday sermon is busy playing. And most of the sermons I'm hearing are like this. Just jumping around the Bible, just firing verses at the congregation. There's no unpacking, there's no exposition happening. Preaching Christ from the text. It's all about me and my temptations and my problems, but you don't hear Jesus at all. So ask God not to help you not shrink back from the truth, because sometimes you're not going to be popular. Truth is offensive. Pray that Christ would become greater and that people wouldn't remember you. They will remember in 20 years' time that they heard a sermon about Jesus, but they won't remember who preached it, and that's a very good thing. I just heard this great sermon that changed my view of Jesus, but don't ask me who preached it. That's great, because actually they've heard God. They didn't hear Andy or anyone else for that matter. Ask God to make you a God pleaser, not a man pleaser. You work for his glory, not your glory. Ask God to help you to be obedient to what you are saying. That's the hardest. I'm going to be interviewed here on Sunday. Richard, the retired guy that I took over from, he puts together, we have a short thing we call the doctrine slot, a 10-minute slot that you can do anything in. Sometimes we interview a missionary, sometimes we have a testimony, and he's going to interview me this Sunday. And why I'm a pastor, and what is the hardest thing about being a pastor? And one of the verses he's given me is Peter, we must be a shepherd of God's flock. I said to him this morning, this is really unfair. I'm not enjoying this. Yeah, I'm the shepherd of a flock, but I'm a sheep. On the one hand, I've been called to be a shepherd, but actually I'm in need of shepherding. I'm the stupid as the sheep. I'm no better. I might have been given a specific gift that happens not to be making tea, but happens to be opening the Bible. But it's not a special gift. This is one of the many gifts the church needs. I'm a sheep with a gift, and now I've been made a shepherd, and it's not very nice. I'm finding it quite stressful. And that's the trouble. We're telling all these other people to do this and to do that, and to trust Christ more. And if you, the Sunday school teacher or the preacher, aren't doing that, it's a problem. And we can't do it perfectly, but we must be first trying to apply the Bible to us. Make sure that God's speaking to me before I'm telling people what he wants to say to them. Is that all right? We'll leave it there for tonight. Any questions or comments or
What's our homework?
Your homework?
Genesis 1 and 2.
That's right. Did you see that from the previous notes? Genesis 1 and 2. So that's what we'll be talking about next week, is creation. It's from Genesis 1 and 2. Yeah. So if you get a chance, like I say, there's nothing compulsory. I'm not taking records. But it will help you. It will be familiar and fresh in your mind when we actually talk about it next week.
To actually saying things are permissible when they totally are not.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. You can justify any idea from the Bible.
Yeah.
You can find a verse that will support you. Out of context, of course. Like an atheist would have chosen Psalm 14. And any idea, whether it's moral, ethical, whatever, you will find. For instance, well, I won't say who, because we've been broadcast all over the world, but someone close to me loves to talk about Jesus saying that in my Father's house there are many rooms. And he loves to apply that to the fact that all religions are going to heaven. Because the one room is for Christianity, one is for Buddhists, and we're all going to get there. We're all going to be in our Father's house because he's the Father of us all. And his house has got lots of rooms. You can come with any belief you want. Now, if you had read the context, if you just read a little bit before or after, Jesus will say, no one comes to my Father but through me. So he doesn't read that. He doesn't quote that, but he will quote the next verse that says there are many rooms. In other words, there's place for Jews, there's place for Gentiles, there's place for every sinner under the sun. If you will bow the knee to Christ, that's what Jesus is meaning. But you can make it say whatever you want if you take it out of context. Yeah. Well, let me pray as we go on our way. Well, Father, thank you for your word. Thank you for being so kind as to speaking and revealing yourself to us and making it clear as to how we can become acceptable to you again, how we can become not just acceptable but adopted as your children. We thank you that men and women have laid down their lives to make sure that the Bible is translated into English and preserved for us. Help us to be responsible with the way that we handle the Bible, and we do pray that you would use this course to that end. Thank you, Lord, that your word becomes alive when we read about it and read it in this context. Now, won't you please take us home safely and bring us back together again safely next week, that we can continue. In Jesus' name, amen.